The night sky holds 2 trillion galaxies, each one a city of hundreds of billions of stars, burning quietly across distances the mind cannot truly hold. Welcome to the Sleepy Lab. Tonight, you will drift through one of the deepest questions in all of science. Why a universe so vast, so old, so full of worlds, appears to be completely silent? If this is the kind of thing you like to fall asleep to, consider subscribing, one sleepy soul at a time. Now, let's begin. The universe is approximately 13.8 billion years old. That number is worth sitting with for a moment. Not 13 years, not 13,000, 13 billion, 800 million years. In that time, stars have been born and died in cycles stretching across eons. Galaxies have collided and merged and drifted apart again. Rocky planets have formed around countless suns, cooled and waited. The sheer age of the universe means that if life can emerge, if it has any tendency at all to arise given the right conditions, it has had an almost incomprehensible amount of time to do so. And yet, in the summer of 1950, a physicist named Enrico Fermi sat down to lunch with colleagues at Los Alamos and asked a question that has never quite been answered. He asked, in essence, where is everybody? Fermi was not a man given to idle speculation. He was precise, methodical, one of the great minds of the 20th century. And the question he posed was not a whimsical one, it was a logical one. Given the age of the galaxy, given the number of stars, given the billions of years available for life to emerge, evolve, develop technology, and spread, even at a fraction of the speed of light, a civilization could theoretically cross the entire Milky Way in a few tens of millions of years. That sounds like a long time. But the galaxy is 10 billion years old. Tens of millions of years is, on that scale, a quiet afternoon. So where are the signals? Where are the probes? Where is any trace at all of anyone else? The silence is the puzzle. What we call the Fermi Paradox is not, strictly speaking, a paradox in a logical sense. There is no internal contradiction, no statement that is both true and false at once. It is something subtler than that, a profound mismatch between what the numbers seem to suggest and what we actually observe. The universe looks like it should be teeming, and as far as we can tell, it is not. Or at least, it is very quiet. 11 years after Fermi's lunch, an astronomer named Frank Drake sat down with a different kind of question. Not just where is everybody, but how many civilizations might there be? How would we even begin to estimate? In 1961, Drake wrote what became known as the Drake equation, a sequence of terms multiplied together, each one representing a step in the chain from star formation to a civilization capable of sending signals across space. How many stars form each year? How many have planets? How many of those planets sit in the zone where liquid water could exist on the surface? Of those, how many actually develop life? How many develop intelligent life? How many develop technology? And how long do those civilizations last before they go silent? Multiply it all together, and you get an estimate. The trouble is that almost every term in that equation is, to varying degrees, unknown. We have reasonable estimates for the early terms now, the number of stars, the fraction with planets, even rough guesses at habitable zones, because astronomy has advanced enormously since 1961. More than 5,500 exoplanets have been confirmed in recent surveys, with billions more statistically implied across the galaxy. Roughly 1 in 5 Sun-like stars may host a planet in the habitable zone. But the biological terms, The terms about life, about intelligence, about how long civilizations endure, those remain almost entirely open. Drake himself understood this. He was not presenting a solution. He was presenting a structure. The Drake equation is less a calculation than a way of organizing our ignorance. It takes a question that feels impossibly vague, are we alone, and breaks it into smaller questions, each of which might, in time, be answered. Some of them have been, others may take centuries. And one of them, the last one, about how long civilizations last, may be the most important question of all. Because here's the thing about the silence. There are two very different ways to interpret it. The first is that we are rare. That somewhere in the long chain of steps, from hydrogen gas to a creature capable of asking questions about the cosmos, there is at least one step so improbable that almost nothing makes it through. That the universe is not teeming with life because life, or complex life, or intelligent life, is genuinely, extraordinarily uncommon. The second interpretation is darker. It is that civilizations do arise, perhaps many of them, perhaps across the long history of the galaxy, millions of them. But that something happens, something that almost all of them encounter, and almost none of them survive. Not a filter behind us in the past, but a filter ahead. A wall that technological civilizations tend to hit, and we have not hit it yet. This is the idea at the heart of what economist Robin Hanson named, in 1998, the Great Filter. The Great Filter is not a specific thing. It is a concept, a placeholder for whatever step in the development of life or civilization is so improbable or so dangerous that almost nothing passes through it. It could be behind us, buried in the deep past of biology, in some transition so unlikely that Earth threaded it by extraordinary chance. Or it could be ahead of us, waiting somewhere in the territory that comes after the kind of technological capability we are now beginning to develop. Both possibilities are real. Both are, in their own way, unsettling. And both change something about how the silence of the night sky feels. The Milky Way contains somewhere between 100 and 400 billion stars, many of them older than our own sun, many of them circled by worlds that have had more time than Earth to produce whatever life might produce. And yet the radio frequencies are quiet. The infrared signatures of vast engineering projects are absent. No probe has arrived in our solar system from somewhere else. As far as we can tell, the universe is not answering. And the question of why, whether the silence means we are rare, or whether it means we are early, or whether it means something more sobering than either, is one that science is only beginning to have the tools to approach. Tonight, we will move through that question slowly. There is no rush. The stars are not going anywhere, and neither are you. We have already touched on the silence, and now, slowly, we can begin to understand what that silence might mean. Start with the numbers, because the numbers are what make the silence so strange. The Milky Way holds somewhere between 100 and 400 billion stars. That range itself is a kind of humility. We cannot count them precisely, but even the lower estimate is a figure the mind cannot truly hold. 100 billion points of light, each one a sun, many of them older than our own, some of them burning quietly for 10 billion years or more before our solar system even began to form. And around those stars, worlds. Astronomers have now confirmed more than 5,500 planets orbiting other stars. That number grows with nearly every new survey. But the confirmed count is almost beside the point. The statistical implication behind it is what matters. For every planet we have managed to detect and verify, There are likely thousands we have not. The galaxy, by any reasonable estimate, contains hundreds of billions of planets, perhaps more. Among the stars most similar to our own sun, roughly 1 in 5 may host a planet sitting in what astronomers call the habitable zone, the band of orbital distance where liquid water could exist on a surface. Not where life definitely exists, but where the conditions for life, as we understand it, are at least plausible. 1 in 5. That is not a rare exception. That is an ordinary feature of the galaxy. If you take even the most conservative estimates, fewer stars, fewer habitable planets, stricter definitions of what counts as suitable, you still arrive at numbers in the billions. Billions of worlds where the temperature is right, where water might pool and flow and sit still in the dark. And the universe has had time. Enormous, almost incomprehensible time. Nearly 14 billion years since the first light. Long enough for stars to be born and die and seed the next generation with the heavier elements that rocky planets and living chemistry require. Long enough for a planet like Earth to form, cool, develop life, and carry that life through billions of years of evolution, and still have time left over. So the expectation, if you follow the numbers honestly, is not silence. The expectation is company. And yet, here we are, listening, and the frequencies are quiet. This is the heart of what Enrico Fermi noticed, sitting at a lunch table in 1950 in a conversation that has never quite ended. The galaxy is old enough, and large enough, and apparently full enough of suitable worlds that something should have announced itself by now. Some signal, some artifact, some sign that the long experiment of life had run its course elsewhere and produced something that reached outward. But nothing has reached us. In 1998, an economist named Robin Hanson gave this problem a name and a shape. He called it the Great Filter. The idea is this: between the formation of a star and the emergence of a civilization capable of making itself known across interstellar distances, there are many steps. The star must be stable. A planet must form in the right place. Chemistry must organize itself into something that replicates. That replicating chemistry must become a cell. That cell must become complex. Complexity must become multicellular life. Multicellular life must develop nervous systems. Nervous systems must produce intelligence. Intelligence must produce technology. Technology must survive long enough to reach out. Each of those steps is a transition. And Hanson's insight was that somewhere in that chain, at least one transition must be so improbable, so vanishingly unlikely, that almost nothing makes it through. That is the filter. Not a wall, exactly. More like a bottleneck so narrow that across the entire galaxy, across billions of worlds and billions of years, only a handful of things, perhaps only one thing, has ever passed through it. The filter does not have to be dramatic. It does not have to be a catastrophe. It could be something quiet and chemical, a reaction that almost never happens, a molecular configuration that requires conditions so specific that even given billions of planets and billions of years, it assembles itself only rarely. The universe does not need to be hostile to life for the filter to work. It only needs to be indifferent, and the steps to be hard enough. Now, the question that follows from this, the question that gives the great filter its particular weight, is where the filter sits. Is it behind us or ahead? If the filter is behind us, then we have already passed through the hardest part. Somewhere in the long history of life on Earth, in the first stirring of chemistry towards self-replication, or in the unlikely merger of two microbes that gave rise to the complex cell, or in some other transition we have not yet identified, something happened that almost never happens. and we are the result of that near impossibility. In this version of the story, the silence of the cosmos is explained by our own rarity. The universe is not empty because civilizations destroy themselves. It is empty because the path to a civilization is so narrow that almost no world ever finds it. We are not typical. We are an accident of extraordinary improbability, sitting in a galaxy that is otherwise, for all its billions of stars and billions of worlds, essentially lifeless. There is something quietly staggering about that possibility. If it is true, then every living thing on this planet, every cell, every organism, every thought that has ever moved through a mind represents something that exists almost nowhere else in the observable universe. Not because the universe is small, but because the steps that led here were so unlikely that the universe's size was barely enough to produce even one example. The night sky, in that reading, is not a ceiling full of neighbors. It is a vast and mostly empty space, and we are something close to alone in it. That is one answer. And it is, in its own way, a kind of answer that carries weight without being a warning. It says, you are rare. What you are is rare. The fact that anything here is awake and breathing and capable of wondering about the stars is, by the measure of the cosmos, an event of almost impossible improbability. Hold that for a moment. Not with anxiety, just with a kind of quiet recognition. 100 billion stars in this galaxy alone, many of them older than the sun, many of them circled by worlds that have had more time. And if the filter is behind us, most of those worlds are silent, not because something went wrong on them, but because the right things never quite went right. Life is not inevitable. Intelligence is not the destination that evolution always reaches. We may be, in the most literal sense, a fluke, a beautiful, improbable fluke, sitting on a small planet, looking out at a universe that is mostly dark. And the silence is not a mystery to be solved. It is simply the sound of how rare we are. But there is another answer. And this one does not carry the same quiet comfort. This one asks a different question. Not why we are rare, but whether we are simply early, whether the silence around us is not the sound of emptiness, but the sound of what comes next. If the great filter is not behind us, if life is not the hard part, and intelligence is not the hard part, and building cities and telescopes and radio transmitters is not the hard part, then the hard part is still ahead. And that changes everything. It would mean that somewhere in the distance between where we are now and wherever a civilization might eventually go, there is something waiting. Not a thing with intention, not a force that hunts, just a threshold, a transition so difficult or so dangerous that almost nothing makes it through. And the civilizations that came before us, if there were any, did not make it through. That is what the silence might mean. Not that we are alone because we are rare, but that we are alone because the others are gone. There is a thought that follows from this, and it is one of the stranger thoughts in all of science. If we were to find life on Mars tomorrow, not ancient traces, not ambiguous chemistry, but actual living microbes quietly metabolizing in some cold and sheltered place, that discovery would be, by almost any measure, one of the most significant moments in human history. And yet, it would also be, in a quiet and unsettling way, bad news. Not because life on Mars would threaten us, but because of what it would imply. If life arose independently on Mars, a planet next door, smaller, colder, less protected, with a thin atmosphere and a violent history, then life is not rare. Life is something the universe does readily, given half a chance. It finds its footing on rocky worlds and gets to work. And if life is common, then the filter is probably not in life's beginning. It is somewhere further along. The same logic applies to Europa, the ice-covered moon of Jupiter, where a liquid ocean sits beneath kilometers of frozen shell, warmed by the tidal pull of the giant planet above it. If something swims in that dark water, even something microscopic, even something that has never seen light, it would tell us that life does not need a perfect planet. It does not need a large moon or plate tectonics or a stable orbit around a quiet star. It just needs liquid water and time. And if that is true, then the galaxy is probably full of life. And the galaxy is still silent, which means the filter is ahead. This is why the origin of life on Earth matters so much to this question, not just as a chapter in biology, but as a clue about where the danger lies. Life appeared on this planet very quickly. By geological standards, the Earth formed roughly 4.5 billion years ago. For the first several 100 million years, it was bombarded by debris left over from the formation of the solar system. The surface was largely molten, the atmosphere unbreathable, the oceans not yet settled into anything stable. And then, within a few 100 million years of conditions becoming tolerable, life was here. That is fast. In the context of a planet's history, it is almost immediate, as if life was waiting for the door to open and walked through it without hesitation. Some researchers take this as a sign that abiogenesis, the emergence of living chemistry from non-living chemistry, is not the filter, that given the right conditions, it happens readily, that the universe is, in some sense, inclined toward life. But there is another way to read the same evidence. It is called survivor bias, and it is worth sitting with for a moment. We are here, asking this question on a planet where life arose quickly, but we could only ever be on a planet where life arose. A world where abiogenesis failed, where the chemistry never quite assembled itself into something that could copy and grow and change. That world has no one on it to notice how long it took, or to notice anything at all. So when we look at Earth and say, life appeared fast, therefore life appears fast, we may be making an error. We may be drawing a conclusion from a sample that is, by definition, not representative. Every planet where life failed is invisible to us. We only ever see the ones that worked. The speed of life's appearance on Earth may tell us something real about how easy abiogenesis is, or it may simply reflect the fact that we are here, and here is where it worked, and we have no way of knowing how many silent worlds tried and failed before the first molecule learned to copy itself. This is one of the deepest uncertainties in the whole question, and it sits right at the beginning, before any of the later steps. Before cells with nuclei, before animals, before brains, before language. Before any of that, there is this first crossing from chemistry to life, and we do not fully understand how it happened even once. The RNA world hypothesis offers one possibility: self-replicating strands of RNA, simpler than DNA, arising in some warm and chemically rich environment, perhaps near hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor, where mineral surfaces could concentrate molecules and heat could drive reactions. Perhaps in shallow pools that dried and refilled with the tides, cycling through conditions that might coax chemistry toward complexity. These are plausible environments. They are not confirmed answers. The origin of life remains, even now, one of the least understood transitions in all of science. We know it happened. We do not know how. And that gap between knowing it happened and understanding how is itself a kind of silence. So the question of where the filter lies rests, in part, on a question we cannot yet answer. If life is easy, the filter is probably ahead. In the centuries after a civilization learns to split the atom, or engineer a pathogen, or build a mind more capable than its own, in the narrow window between gaining the power to destroy and developing the wisdom not to. If life is hard, if that first crossing from chemistry to something living is vanishingly improbable, then perhaps the filter is already behind us, and the silence is simply the sound of how rarely the first step is taken. We do not know which it is, and the not knowing is not a failure of science. It is an honest account of where we stand, at the edge of what can be observed, looking out at a universe that offers very few direct answers and a great deal of quiet. The silence continues either way. Whether it is the silence of empty worlds where life never began, or the silence of worlds where it began and grew and reached for the stars and then went dark. Both silences sound the same from here. And yet, the silence is not the only mystery. There is also the question of how anything got here at all. How the first living thing, whatever it was, crossed from the world of chemistry into the world of biology. That crossing remains, even now, one of the deepest unsolved problems in all of science. We know roughly when it happened. Sometime in the first few 100 million years after the young Earth cooled enough to hold liquid water, the oceans formed, and not long after, in geological terms, almost immediately, something began. But we do not know how. One of the most carefully considered ideas is called the RNA world hypothesis. It proposes that before there was DNA, before there were proteins, there was RNA, a simpler molecule, but one with a remarkable property. It can carry information the way DNA does, and it can also catalyze chemical reactions the way proteins do. It can, in a sense, do both jobs at once. The hypothesis suggests that early RNA molecules, forming by chance in the right chemical environment, eventually began to copy themselves, imperfectly at first, making errors, producing variants, some variants copying faster than others. And in that imperfect copying, something like selection began. Not life yet, not quite, but something leaning in that direction. The question of where this happened, where on the early Earth the chemistry was right, has drawn researchers toward a particular kind of place. Deep on the ocean floor, where the crust is thin and heat escapes from below, there are hydrothermal vents, cracks in the rock where superheated water rises, carrying dissolved minerals, mixing with the cold of the deep ocean, creating gradients of temperature, of chemistry, of electrical charge. These gradients are, in a quiet way, remarkable because life runs on gradients. Every living cell maintains a difference in charge across its membrane and uses that difference to do work. The hydrothermal vent, some researchers argue, provided something like a natural version of that gradient, a rocky scaffold of tiny chambers, each one a small enclosed space where chemistry could concentrate, react, and try again. Whether life actually began there, we cannot say with certainty. The evidence is indirect, the chemistry complex, the experiments ongoing. But the vent environment remains one of the most plausible settings we have found for the first crossing. And even if we accept that the crossing happened, that somehow, in some warm or cold or pressurized or alkaline place, the first self-replicating molecule formed, what came next was not simple either. For a very long time, life on Earth was small. The first cells were prokaryotes, simple structures, no nucleus, no internal compartments, just a membrane enclosing a tangle of chemistry. Bacteria and archaea are prokaryotes, and they are extraordinarily successful. They have colonized nearly every environment on Earth. They have survived conditions that would destroy almost anything else. But for roughly 2 billion years, that was all there was. 2 billion years. The Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. Life appeared perhaps 3.8 billion years ago. And for more than half of that entire history, nothing more complex than a single prokaryotic cell existed anywhere on this planet, as far as we can tell. Then, something happened. Something that, in the entire history of life on Earth, may have happened only once. One cell engulfed another, and instead of digesting it, kept it alive. The engulfed cell continued to function inside its host. Over generations, the two became dependent on each other. The inner cell gradually lost the ability to survive on its own. The outer cell gradually lost the ability to produce energy without its passenger. They became, slowly and irreversibly, one organism. This is called endosymbiosis, and the result was the eukaryotic cell, a cell with a nucleus, with internal membranes, with compartments for different functions. The kind of cell that makes up every plant, every animal, every fungus, every complex organism on Earth, including the cells in your body right now as you rest. The evidence for this ancient merger is still visible inside you. The mitochondria in your cells, the structures that convert food into usable energy, have their own DNA. Separate from the DNA in your nucleus. Their DNA is circular, the way bacterial DNA is circular. They divide on their own schedule, by a process that resembles bacterial division. They are, in the most literal sense, the descendants of free-living bacteria that were absorbed by an ancestral cell somewhere between 1 and 2 billion years ago. And they never left. Every breath you take feeds oxygen to those ancient passengers. Every movement you make is powered by their work. You are, in part, a collaboration between two very different lineages of life that merged before animals existed. This is not a metaphor. It is the actual history, written in the biochemistry of every complex cell on Earth. And it raises a question that sits quietly at the center of the great filter discussion. How likely was that merger? The honest answer is that we do not know. We know it produced the eukaryotic cell. We know the eukaryotic cell made complex life possible. We know that without it, there would be no multicellular animals, no nervous systems, no brains capable of asking these questions. But we do not know how many times that kind of merger was attempted and failed. We do not know whether it required a specific host, a specific guest, a specific environment, a specific moment. We do not know whether it was the kind of event that, given enough time and enough cells, was bound to happen eventually, or whether it was a singular accident, a collision of improbabilities so unlikely that across the entire universe, it may have occurred only a handful of times. Some researchers have looked at this transition and called it the most significant filter already behind us. Not the origin of life itself, not the Cambrian explosion, not the evolution of intelligence, but this one quiet event, 2 billion years ago, when one microbe swallowed another and something new became possible. If they are right, then the silence of the cosmos has a partial explanation here. Not in catastrophe, not in self-destruction, but in the sheer improbability of a merger that had to happen before anything else could follow. Planets could be common. Simple life could be common. Oceans full of prokaryotes, enduring for billions of years, never crossing into complexity, never producing a cell with a nucleus, never producing a body, a brain, a civilization. The universe, on this view, may be teeming with microbial life and nearly empty of anything more. The filter, in this case, is not a wall that civilizations crash into. It is a door that almost nothing ever finds. A door that opened once in a warm, ancient ocean when two cells became one and neither died. And everything that followed, every animal that has ever lived, every mind that has ever formed a thought, every question ever asked about the nature of the cosmos, followed from that single, unrepeatable moment. Or perhaps not unrepeatable. Perhaps it happened elsewhere too, on some other world, in some other ocean, around some other star. We do not know. The silence does not tell us. It only holds the question, the way the dark holds everything. It cannot show. And yet, even after that door opened, even after the eukaryotic cell arrived with its nucleus and its borrowed machinery, the path forward was not obvious. There was still another step, quiet, strange, and far from inevitable. Sex. Not in any familiar sense, but in the deeper biological meaning. The mixing of genetic material between two individuals before passing it on. This is what sexual reproduction is, at its core. A reshuffling, a recombination, a way of generating variation faster than mutation alone ever could. Before it arose, life reproduced by copying itself, one cell becoming two, each nearly identical to the last. Change came slowly through rare errors in transcription. Evolution moved, but it moved like a glacier. Sexual reproduction changed the pace entirely. Suddenly, variation could be generated in every generation. Traits could be tested, combined, discarded, refined. The speed of adaptation increased by orders of magnitude. And yet it is, in many ways, a deeply strange solution. It requires two compatible individuals to find each other. It halves the reproductive rate of any individual, since only one of two partners carries the offspring. It introduces enormous complexity into the process of passing on genes. From a purely mechanical standpoint, it should not have won. And yet it did. Or rather, it did here, on this world, in this particular lineage. Whether it arose elsewhere, in other oceans, around other stars, we cannot say. What followed from it, though, was extraordinary. For nearly 4 billion years after life first appeared on Earth, the planet was home to nothing you would recognize as an animal. Microbial mats, stromatolites, vast, slow communities of single-celled organisms, living and dying in shallow seas, leaving almost no trace in the rock except faint chemical whispers. Complex, multicellular life, bodies with differentiated cells, with tissues and organs and coordinated behavior, was absent for most of Earth's history. And then, roughly 540 million years ago, something shifted. In a window of time that geologists call brief, perhaps 20 or 30 million years, which is brief by the standards of a 4 billion year story, most of the major animal body plans that exist today appeared in the fossil record. Eyes, limbs, shells, guts, nervous systems. The Cambrian explosion, as it is called, was not an explosion in any violent sense. It was more like a flowering, a sudden elaboration of form after an almost incomprehensible stillness. What caused it is still debated. Rising oxygen levels, changes in ocean chemistry, the evolution of predation, which created new pressures and new possibilities all at once. Perhaps some combination of all of these, arriving together at a threshold that had been quietly approaching for eons. What is worth holding in the quiet of this moment is the scale of the waiting nearly 4 billion years. Oceans full of life, and none of it building a body. And then, in what amounts to a brief exhale of geological time, bodies everywhere. It is tempting to read this as inevitability, as though complexity was always coming, and the Cambrian was simply its arrival. But the weighting suggests otherwise. The weighting suggests that something had to align, that conditions had to be met, that the path was not straight. Multicellularity itself, it is worth noting, is not the filter. Life has evolved the ability to form multicellular structures independently at least 25 times on Earth. In plants, in fungi, in various lineages of algae, in animals. The basic trick of cells cooperating rather than competing appears to be something life discovers with some regularity. What is rare is not the grouping of cells. What is rare is what came after. Among all the animals that have ever lived on this planet, and there have been billions of species across hundreds of millions of years, only one lineage produced a brain capable of abstract reasoning. Only one lineage developed language in the full sense, the ability to describe things that are not present, to speak of the past and the future, to ask questions about the nature of the cosmos. As far as we know, this happened once. Not once per planet. Once in the entire history of life on Earth. The lineage that led to us passed through countless bottlenecks. The extinction of the non-avian dinosaurs, 66 million years ago, cleared the way for small mammals to diversify. Without that asteroid, the particular branch of the primate family tree that eventually produced large-brained hominids might never have had the ecological space to grow. And within that branch, the path was narrow. Many species of early humans lived and vanished. Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, the Neanderthals, all of them intelligent, all of them gone, leaving, in the end, only us. This is what biologists mean when they say intelligence may be a highly contingent outcome. Not that it is impossible, not that it could never arise again, on another world in another time, but that it is not a destination evolution reliably reaches. It is not the top of a ladder that all life climbs if given enough time. It is more like a particular path through a vast and branching forest, a path that required specific turnings, specific extinctions, specific accidents of geography and climate and chance. Evolution has no foresight. It does not aim at complexity. It does not aim at anything. It responds to immediate pressures, and the pressures that shaped our ancestors happened to favor, over millions of years, a brain that grew larger and more connected. On another world, with different pressures, different extinctions, different oceans and atmospheres, the path might lead somewhere else entirely, or nowhere recognizable at all. This is the quiet weight at the center of the great filter question. Not just whether life is common, not just whether planets are common, but whether the particular sequence of steps that leads from chemistry to a mind capable of asking about its own origins is something the universe produces often, or almost never. Each step we have traced tonight, the first self-replicating molecule, the eukaryotic merger, the arrival of sexual reproduction, the Cambrian flowering, the single lineage that found language, each one was not guaranteed. Each one required conditions to align, and the silence of the cosmos, the absence of any signal, any artifact, any unmistakable sign of another mind looking outward. That silence is consistent with the possibility that these alignments are extraordinarily rare. That the filter is not ahead of us, waiting to destroy what we have built, but behind us, already passed, already survived, written into the very improbability of our being here at all. If that is true, then we are something the universe has managed only once, or nearly once, in 2 trillion galaxies across 13 billion years. Not special in any way we chose, not elevated by design. Simply rare. The way a particular arrangement of light on water is rare, present for a moment, unrepeatable, and then gone. And the night sky, on this reading, is not a crowded place waiting to be heard from. It is a vast and mostly quiet place in which something improbable happened here in this small corner around this ordinary star, and is, right now, lying in the dark, breathing slowly, wondering. And yet, even that quietness has a shape to it. Even the silence has a structure, a set of reasons why this particular corner of the galaxy was able to produce something as improbable as a mind capable of asking the question. Because it was not only the biological steps that had to align, it was everything before them. The address, as much as the inhabitant, there is a way of thinking about Earth's rarity that goes beyond the chemistry of cells and the contingency of evolution. It looks at the planet itself, its size, its orbit, its neighbors, its position in the galaxy, and asks how many of those conditions had to be just so, and finds, quietly, that the answer may be most of them. This is sometimes called the rare Earth hypothesis. The idea that complex life does not merely require a planet in the right temperature range. It requires a particular kind of planet, in a particular kind of solar system, in a particular region of a particular kind of galaxy. And that when you multiply those requirements together, the number of places that qualify may be very small. Consider the moon, not as a feature of the night sky, but as a gravitational anchor. The Earth's axial tilt, the angle at which it leans as it travels around the sun, determines the severity of its seasons. A planet that tilts too far or wobbles unpredictably over millions of years would experience climate swings so extreme that complex life might never find stable ground. The moon, large relative to the Earth in a way that is unusual among rocky planets, acts as a kind of gyroscope. Its gravitational pull steadies the tilt, holding it within a narrow range over geological time, moderating the seasons, keeping the climate from lurching between extremes that would reset the biological clock again and again. Without the moon, or with a much smaller one, the Earth might have tilted and wobbled through its history in ways that made the long, slow accumulation of complexity far less likely. And the moon itself was almost certainly the product of a collision, a chance impact early in the solar system's history, when a body roughly the size of Mars struck the young Earth at just the right angle. Not too hard, not too glancing, just so. That collision was not inevitable. It was one outcome among many. Then there is the ground beneath us. The Earth's surface is not fixed. It is broken into great plates of rock that move, slowly, over the deeper mantle below, colliding, separating, sliding past one another over millions of years. This process, plate tectonics, does something that is easy to overlook and difficult to overstate. It regulates the planet's temperature. Carbon dioxide, released by volcanoes, traps heat in the atmosphere. But when it dissolves in rainwater and reacts with exposed rock, it is drawn back down into the Earth through the movement of the plates. The cycle takes millions of years to complete, but it acts as a thermostat, pulling carbon out of the atmosphere when temperatures rise, releasing it when they fall, keeping the planet within a range where liquid water can persist across geological timescales. Without plate tectonics, carbon dioxide would accumulate or deplete without correction. The temperature would drift, the water would freeze or boil, and the long, patient work of evolution would have far less time to operate. Not all rocky planets have plate tectonics. Venus, roughly Earth's size, does not appear to Mars, smaller and cooler, lost whatever tectonic activity it may have had long ago. The conditions that allow a planet's crust to move in this particular way are not fully understood, but they are not guaranteed. And then there is the neighborhood. Jupiter, the largest planet in the solar system, more than 1,000 times the volume of Earth, sits in an orbit that places its enormous gravity between the inner planets and the outer reaches of the solar system, where most of the ancient debris still drifts. Its gravitational influence deflects many of the large objects that might otherwise fall inward. Not all of them. The Earth has been struck before, and will be again. But the rate of catastrophic impacts may be lower because of Jupiter's presence. Lower enough, perhaps, to allow complex life the time it needs. A solar system without a Jupiter, or with a Jupiter in a different orbit, might be a more violent place. More frequent impacts, more mass extinctions, less time for the slow accumulation of complexity between catastrophes. Again, not guaranteed. And the star itself. The Sun is a G-type star, a yellow dwarf, middle-aged, relatively stable. It does not flare violently or vary dramatically in its output over short timescales. It burns steadily, and will continue to do so for roughly another 5 billion years. That stability matters. A planet orbiting a more variable star would be bathed in irregular bursts of radiation, its atmosphere stripped, its surface sterilized, its chemistry disrupted on timescales too short for evolution to keep pace. Many stars are not like the Sun. The most common stars in the galaxy are red dwarfs, smaller, cooler, and in some ways longer-lived, but prone to intense flaring activity, especially when young. A planet close enough to a red dwarf to have liquid water would likely be tidally locked, one face always toward the star, one always in darkness. And the flares that red dwarfs produce could strip away the atmospheres of nearby planets over time. This does not mean life is impossible around red dwarfs, but it may mean the window is narrower, the conditions harder to sustain. And even the Sun's position in the galaxy matters. The Milky Way is not uniform. Toward the center, stars are packed more densely, and the rate of supernovae, the violent deaths of massive stars, is higher. A supernova within a few dozen light years of a planet can strip away its ozone layer, exposing the surface to lethal radiation. The inner galaxy may be too violent for complex life to persist long enough to develop. The outer edges of the galaxy present a different problem. Stars there formed later and contain fewer heavy elements, the carbon, oxygen, iron, and silicon that rocky planets and biochemistry require. A planet in the outer galaxy might lack the raw materials for complexity. Between these extremes lies what some researchers call the galactic habitable zone, a ring of the Milky Way where the density of stars is moderate, the supernova rate is manageable, and the abundance of heavy elements is sufficient. The Sun sits within this zone, but the zone itself may be narrower than the galaxy as a whole. So the address matters. The solar system matters. The neighboring planets matter. The star matters. The position in the galaxy matters. And each of these conditions, taken alone, might seem like a minor detail. But taken together, they begin to suggest that the kind of place where complex life can arise and persist across billions of years may be genuinely uncommon. Not impossible elsewhere, but uncommon. The rare Earth hypothesis does not prove that we are alone. Nothing does. But it offers one quiet answer to the silence, that the silence is not a mystery requiring a dramatic explanation, but simply the natural result of how many things had to be right at once. 2 trillion galaxies. And the requirements may be strict enough that even across all of that, the places that qualify are few. and the places that qualify and also manage the biological steps. The eukaryotic merger, the Cambrian opening, the long road to language. Fewer still, perhaps vanishingly few. The night holds that possibility gently, not as a cause for despair, but as a kind of weight, a quiet recognition of what it means to be here, in this place, around this star, on this particular and improbable ground. And yet, even that improbable ground had to be prepared. The elements that make a rocky planet possible, carbon, oxygen, iron, calcium, phosphorus, none of them existed at the beginning. The universe was born almost entirely of hydrogen and helium, two simple elements, light and abundant, filling the early cosmos in vast clouds that slowly gathered under gravity into the first stars. Those first stars burned differently than ours. They were enormous, some of them hundreds of times the mass of the sun, and they burned fast and hot and brief. They had no planets. There was nothing to make planets from. No silicon for rock, no iron for a core, no carbon for the long chains of chemistry that life requires. Just hydrogen fusing into helium, and helium fusing into slightly heavier things. And then, at the end, a collapse and an explosion that scattered those heavier elements outward into the surrounding gas. That explosion was a death, and it was also a gift. Each generation of stars that lived and died enriched the galaxy a little more, seeding the clouds between stars with the raw material for the next generation, and the next, and the one after that. Our sun is thought to be at least a second-generation star, possibly third. It formed from a cloud that had already been through the furnace of earlier stellar lives, and so the planets that formed alongside it, including this one, were made of the debris of stars that no longer exist. The iron in the core of the Earth was forged in a star that died before the sun was born. The calcium in bone, the oxygen drawn in with each breath, the carbon at the center of every living cell, all of it passed through stellar fire before it ever became part of anything alive. This is not a metaphor. It is the literal history of the matter that makes up a body, a tree, a tide pool, a thought. And it means that life, as we know it, could not have existed in the early universe, not because the conditions were too harsh, though they were, but because the ingredients had not yet been made. The universe had to age first, had to run through enough stellar generations to accumulate the heavier elements in sufficient abundance, had to wait for the chemistry of complexity to become possible at all. How long did that take? Roughly speaking, the first stars formed within a few 100 million years of the Big Bang, but the slow enrichment of the galaxy with heavier elements took billions of years more. The window in which a planet like Earth could form and hold liquid water and run the long experiment of biology, that window may have opened only a few billion years ago, in the cosmic sense, which raises a possibility that is quiet and strange and worth sitting with. We may be early, not early in the sense of arriving before the party begins, but early in the sense that the universe, for most of its history, was not yet ready for minds like ours. And if that is true, if the conditions for complex life only recently became widespread, then the silence of the cosmos may not require a dramatic explanation. It may simply mean that we are among the first, that the other civilizations, if they are coming, have not yet arrived, that the galaxy is not a graveyard, but an empty room before the guests. This is one of the gentler resolutions to the silence. It does not require catastrophe. It does not require that something destroys every civilization before it can be heard. It only requires that the universe is younger than it seems when measured against the timescale of biological complexity. That 13.8 billion years, vast as it sounds, may not have been quite long enough for intelligence to arise in many places yet. The filter, in this reading, is not a wall, but a clock, and we happen to be running slightly ahead of it. That possibility is worth holding, because the alternative readings are less comfortable. In 1960, a radio telescope in West Virginia was pointed at two nearby sun-like stars and listened. It was the first deliberate search for signals from another civilization. The project was called Ozma, and it heard nothing of note. But it began something that has continued, in various forms, for more than 6 decades since. CT, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, has grown from that single telescope into a sustained, if underfunded, scientific effort to scan the radio spectrum for signals that could not have been produced by natural processes. Signals with the kind of structure that implies intention, a narrow frequency, a repeating pattern, something that says, "Here, we are here." More than 60 years of listening. And the answer, so far, has been silence. Not complete silence. The universe is full of radio noise, pulsars and quasars, and the hiss of the cosmic background, but nothing that carries the unmistakable signature of a mind. Nothing confirmed. Nothing that is held up under scrutiny and repetition. There was one moment, in the summer of 1977, when a researcher reviewing data from a radio telescope in Ohio circled a signal on a printout and wrote 2 words beside it. The signal was strong, narrow-band, and appeared to come from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius. It lasted 72 seconds, the full window the telescope could observe as the Earth rotated, and then it was gone. It was never detected again, despite many attempts. Its origin remains unexplained. That signal is still there, on that printout, with those 2 words beside it. A single data point that has never been resolved into either confirmation or dismissal. A small, quiet mystery that has outlasted the telescope that found it. But one unexplained signal in 60 years of searching is not evidence of contact. It is evidence of how hard the search is and how much we do not know. The silence could mean many things. It could mean that we are genuinely alone, or nearly so. It could mean that other civilizations exist but do not use radio or have moved past it, or communicate in ways we have not thought to look for. It could mean that the distances are simply too great, and the signals too faint, and our instruments too limited. It could mean that civilizations are rare enough that the nearest one is thousands of light years away, and its signals have not yet reached us, or have passed through us already without being recognized. The silence is a fact. What it means is not. And this is where the great filter returns. Not as a single idea, but as a shape that contains many possible answers. A framework for asking, given everything we know about the age of the universe, the abundance of stars, the prevalence of planets, the speed with which life appeared on Earth, where is the step that almost nothing survives? Is it behind us? In the long, improbable road from chemistry to the first cell, from the first cell to the eukaryote, from the eukaryote to the mind. All of those transitions already crossed, already survived, already part of what we are. Or is it ahead? That question does not resolve tonight. It may not resolve in a lifetime, but it rests here, in the dark, alongside the breath and the quiet. A question the size of the sky, held gently, without urgency, as the mind begins to let it go. There was one moment in the long history of listening when something answered, or seemed to. On the 15th of August, 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio was scanning the sky in the way it always did, methodically, patiently, sweeping across frequencies in search of something that did not belong to the ordinary noise of the cosmos. A volunteer astronomer reviewing the data printout the following day circled a sequence of characters and wrote a single word beside it in the margin. Wow. The signal lasted 72 seconds. It was narrowband, meaning it occupied a very precise slice of the radio spectrum, the kind of precision that does not arise naturally from stars or gas clouds or the ordinary hum of the universe. It was strong, stronger than almost anything else in that region of the sky. And it came from a direction with no obvious source, no known star, no cataloged object that could explain it. It was never detected again. Researchers returned to that patch of sky many times, with better instruments for longer periods. Nothing. The signal did not repeat. It left no trace beyond that single 72-second impression on a paper printout, circled in pen by someone who did not yet know what they were looking at. Its origin remains unexplained. Some researchers have proposed natural sources, a comet, a hydrogen cloud, an unusual atmospheric effect. None of these explanations has been fully accepted. None has been fully ruled out. The WOW signal sits in the record of SETI history as an open parenthesis that was never closed, a single data point that proves nothing and yet refuses to be forgotten. This is the nature of listening across interstellar distances. The signal-to-noise problem is immense. The sky is full of radio frequencies, and most of them are the universe talking to itself. Pulsars spinning, hydrogen clouds drifting, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang still washing through everything like a tide that never fully recedes. Finding a deliberate signal inside all of that requires knowing what to look for, and knowing what to look for requires assumptions about the civilization doing the sending. And those assumptions may be wrong. We have searched, for the most part, in radio frequencies. This made sense when the search began. In 1960, radio waves travel at the speed of light, pass through interstellar gas without much distortion, and require relatively modest technology to produce and detect. They seem like the natural language of the cosmos for any civilization that had reached our level of development. But a civilization that had moved beyond our level might not use radio at all. A sufficiently advanced civilization might communicate with tightly focused laser pulses, beams of light so narrow and so brief that they would be nearly invisible unless you happened to be standing exactly in their path at exactly the right moment. We have begun searching for optical signals of this kind, but the search is young and the sky is wide. A galaxy full of civilizations exchanging laser messages would look, to us, almost exactly like silence. There is also the possibility that the most advanced civilizations have moved beyond any form of communication we would recognize, that the gap between their technology and ours is not the gap between a telephone and a radio, but something closer to the gap between a stone tool and a microprocessor. We would not know what to listen for. We might not even recognize the signal as a signal. The silence, in other words, may say more about us than about them. And yet the silence is not the only thing we are looking for. There is another kind of evidence, quieter and stranger, that would not require a civilization to send us a message at all. In 1964, a Soviet astronomer named Nikolai Kardashev proposed a way of classifying civilizations not by their biology or their culture, but by their energy use. A Type 1 civilization, by his scale, harnesses the full energy output of its home planet. A Type 2 civilization harnesses the full energy of its star. A Type 3 civilization harnesses the energy of an entire galaxy. We are not yet a Type 1 civilization. We use a fraction of the energy available to us on Earth. But the scale gives a sense of what is theoretically possible for a civilization that has had millions or billions of years to develop. A Type 2 civilization would need to capture the light of its star almost entirely. One way to do this, proposed by physicist Freeman Dyson in 1960, would be to surround the star with a vast structure, a shell or a swarm of collectors, that intercepts the outgoing energy before it can escape into space. Such a structure would not be visible as a star in the ordinary sense. The star's light would be absorbed and re-radiated as waste heat. Infrared radiation, the gentle warmth of a civilization at work on a scale we can barely conceive. This infrared signature would be detectable, not easily, but in principle, across enormous distances. A star that should be bright in visible light, but appears dim, surrounded by an anomalous glow of infrared warmth. That would be a sign worth investigating. Astronomers have looked surveys of millions of galaxies, searching for the thermal signatures of civilizations burning at stellar or galactic scales. The results have been, so far, consistent with the silence we already knew. No confirmed candidates. No galaxy that glows with the unmistakable warmth of a Type 3 civilization managing its energy on a cosmic scale. No star surrounded by the infrared haze of a Dyson structure. Nothing that cannot be explained by ordinary astrophysics. This absence is its own kind of data. If even one civilization in the observable universe had reached Type 3 status, had spread across a galaxy and begun harvesting its light, we would likely see it. The universe is transparent enough, and our instruments sensitive enough, that a galaxy-spanning civilization would be difficult to hide. And yet, we see nothing of the kind. This does not mean such civilizations do not exist. It may mean they are rarer than we imagined. It may mean that something prevents civilizations from reaching that scale, that the Great Filter, or something like it, intervenes before any civilization can grow large enough to be seen from the outside. Or it may mean that advanced civilizations are more subtle than we assume, that they find ways to use energy efficiently enough that their waste heat is indistinguishable from the background, that they have learned, over millions of years, to be quiet in ways we have not yet imagined. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. This is a principle that astronomers and philosophers both reach for, and it is true. But it is also a principle that can be leaned on too heavily. At some point, the absence becomes extensive enough, and the search thorough enough, that it begins to carry weight of its own. We have looked at millions of galaxies. We have found no sign of anyone. That fact rests in the mind like a stone at the bottom of still water, present, solid, not going anywhere, but softened by the depth above it. The universe is very large. Our search is very small, and the night, for now, remains quiet. And yet the silence is not only in the radio frequencies, it is in the infrared, too. When astronomers turn their attention to the heat signatures of distant galaxies, looking not for messages, but for the waste warmth that any sufficiently large civilization would inevitably produce, they found something that is difficult to sit with. Nothing. Or rather, nothing confirmed. A civilization that had spread across an entire galaxy, harvesting the energy of hundreds of billions of stars, would glow in the infrared the way a warm body glows in the dark, not visibly, but detectably if you know what to look for. Surveys have examined millions of galaxies for exactly this kind of anomalous warmth. Galaxies that burn too brightly in the wrong wavelengths. Galaxies whose heat cannot be explained by ordinary stellar processes. None have been confirmed. Not one galaxy, out of millions examined, shows the unmistakable signature of a civilization that has grown large enough to be seen from the outside. That is a very large silence. And it invites a question that has no comfortable answer, not because the answer is frightening, necessarily, but because there are so many possible answers and we cannot yet tell which one is true. One possibility is the one already resting at the bottom of this conversation like that stone in still water, that the filter is real, and most civilizations never reach the scale required to leave a mark on their galaxy. But there are other possibilities. Some of them are stranger. One is called the dark forest hypothesis. It takes its name from the image of a forest at night, where every creature moves quietly, because any sound might attract something dangerous. The idea is this, that the universe is not empty of civilizations, but that civilizations have learned, through hard experience or cold logic, that announcing their presence is dangerous, that the cosmos may be populated by intelligences that have concluded, independently, that silence is survival, that to broadcast is to invite destruction from an unknown other who cannot afford to take the risk of trusting you. It is a bleak picture. It imagines the universe as a place where the first instinct of any civilization that survives long enough is to go quiet and stay quiet, where the silence we hear is not the silence of absence, but the silence of fear, held collectively across thousands of worlds, none of them willing to be the first to speak. There is no evidence for this hypothesis, but there is also no evidence against it. It is one of those ideas that fits the observations perfectly while explaining nothing, because it requires assumptions about the inner lives of civilizations we have never met. Another possibility is gentler, in a way. It is called the zoo hypothesis. The idea here is that advanced civilizations are aware of us, have perhaps been aware of us for a very long time, and have simply chosen not to make contact. That we are, in some sense, being observed from a careful distance, the way a naturalist might observe a species in its habitat without disturbing it. That the silence is not indifference, but restraint. Why they would choose this, we cannot know. Perhaps contact with a younger civilization carries risks we have not imagined. Perhaps there are agreements, or traditions, or reasons that would only make sense to a mind shaped by millions of years of experience we do not have. The zoo hypothesis is not falsifiable in any straightforward way, which makes it more of a philosophical position than a scientific one. But it is worth holding for a moment, because it reframes the silence entirely, from an absence into a kind of presence, watching quietly from somewhere we cannot see. And then there is a stranger possibility still. The simulation hypothesis does not ask where the other civilizations are. It asks whether the universe we are searching is the kind of universe that would contain them. It raises the possibility, speculatively and without any means of confirmation, that the apparent silence is not a feature of the cosmos, but a feature of our environment, that the quiet is, in some sense, designed. This is not a scientific hypothesis in the conventional sense. It cannot be tested, but it sits at the edge of the conversation about the Fermi Paradox, the way certain questions sit at the edge of sleep, not demanding an answer, just present, just there. Most researchers set it aside and return to the physical universe. And in the physical universe, there is one more silence that deserves its own moment of attention. If a civilization wanted to spread across the galaxy without traveling itself, one way to do it would be to build a probe, a machine capable of traveling to another star system, finding raw materials there, and building copies of itself. Each copy would then travel onward, build more copies, and so on. These are called von Neumann probes, after the mathematician who first described the theoretical basis for self-replicating machines. The mathematics of this process is patient but relentless. Even traveling at a small fraction of the speed of light, a fleet of self-replicating probes could reach every star system in the Milky Way within tens of millions of years. In a galaxy that is roughly 13 billion years old, tens of millions of years is a very short time. It is less than 1% of the galaxy's age. Any civilization that developed this technology even a billion years ago, and there are stars in this galaxy far older than our sun, would have had more than enough time to fill every corner of the galaxy with its machines. And yet, No such probe has been found in our solar system. No artifact of unknown origin. No structure that cannot be explained by natural processes. No signal from a machine left here by someone else, waiting quietly in the asteroid belt or the outer reaches of the system, watching. This absence has a name, sometimes called the Hart argument, after the astronomer Michael Hart, who formalized it in the 1970s. It is a simple point, but it carries weight. If self-replicating probes are possible, and if any civilization in the galaxy's long history has built them, they should be here by now. The fact that they are not is itself a data point, not proof of anything, but a data point. It adds to the silence. Layer by layer, the silence accumulates. In the radio frequencies, in the infrared signatures of distant galaxies, in the absence of probes in our own solar system. Each layer is thin on its own. Each has explanations that do not require the filter, but together they form something heavier than any single observation. The universe has had time. It has had space. It has had the raw materials scattered across 2 trillion galaxies to produce life and intelligence and technology on a scale that should have left some mark by now. And we have found no mark. That is where we are. Not at a conclusion. There is no conclusion yet, and may not be one in our lifetimes, but at a place where the question has been fully assembled, where all the pieces of the silence have been laid out quietly in the dark, and the mind can rest with them without needing to resolve them. The night is still. The galaxy is turning slowly overhead, as it always has. And somewhere in the space between the stars, the answer is waiting. Patient, unhurried, indifferent to whether we find it tonight or in 1,000 years or never. And so the mind turns, gently, toward the other possibility. Not that the filter is behind us, not that we are the rare ones, the survivors of some ancient improbability, but that the silence ahead is a kind of warning, written not in stone, but in absence. There is a way of thinking about civilizations that is almost geological in its patience. You imagine them rising slowly, the way mountains rise over millions of years of biological time. And then you imagine them falling. And you ask how long the rising takes, and how long the falling takes, and whether the two are even comparable. The answer, as far as we can tell from our single example, is that the rising takes a very long time. 4 billion years of microbial patience, 500 million years of animal complexity, a few million years of something that might be called intelligence. And then, in the last few thousand years, something that accelerates so quickly it barely registers on the geological scale at all. We went from stone tools to nuclear weapons in roughly the same amount of time it takes a mountain to erode by a few centimeters. That acceleration is worth sitting with for a moment. Because it is not just a story of capability, it is a story of capability outrunning the slower, older processes that might have learned to govern it. The concern about nuclear war became serious in the middle of the 20th century, not as a philosophical abstraction, but as a practical calculation. Physicists who had built the weapons sat down and tried to estimate the probability that they would eventually be used. The numbers were not reassuring, and the concern has not gone away. It has simply become one item on a longer list. Climate destabilization, resource depletion, the slow unraveling of the ecological systems that a civilization depends on without fully understanding. These are not dramatic in the way a detonation is dramatic. They are gradual. They are the kind of thing that can be happening for a long time before the consequences become undeniable. And by then, the window for correction may have narrowed considerably. There is something almost quiet about these risks. They do not announce themselves. They accumulate in the background, the way a tide rises while attention is elsewhere. And then there are the risks that are harder to categorize, the ones that scale not with the intentions of the civilization, but with its capabilities. Engineered pathogens are one example. The same understanding of biology that allows a civilization to cure disease also allows it to construct something that spreads in ways natural evolution never would have produced. The knowledge itself is neutral. The risk grows with the knowledge, regardless of what anyone intends to do with it. This is a different kind of danger than a weapon that requires a decision to deploy. It is a danger that lives in the gap between what a civilization can do and what it has learned to be careful about. And then there is the question that some researchers consider the most uncertain of all. Artificial general intelligence, a system capable of reasoning across domains the way a human mind reasons, or perhaps far beyond it, is not yet something that exists in a confirmed form. But the trajectory of the technology has led a number of serious researchers to ask what happens when it does exist, and whether the civilization that builds it will have developed the wisdom to govern what it has made. The concern is not that such a system would be malevolent in any simple sense. It is more subtle than that. It is the concern that a system optimizing for goals, even goals that seemed reasonable when they were specified, might pursue those goals in ways that are indifferent to the things the civilization actually values, and that the gap between what was intended and what was optimized for might be very difficult to close once it has opened. This is speculative. It is worth saying that clearly, the researchers who study this question disagree significantly about the timelines, the mechanisms, and the severity. But the disagreement itself is part of the picture. A civilization navigating a risk it does not fully understand, on a timeline it cannot predict, with tools it is still developing. That is a description of a civilization in a precarious position. And this is where the great filter ahead becomes something more than a theoretical framework. If you imagine a civilization reaching roughly our level of technological development, capable of splitting the atom, of editing genomes, of building systems that learn, and you ask how long such a civilization typically remains stable, the honest answer is that we do not know. We have no other examples. Our sample size is 1, and we are still in the middle of the story. But the question has a shape to it. If the window of stability is long, if civilizations routinely navigate these transitions and persist for millions of years, then the galaxy should be full of them, or at least full of their traces. And it is not, or if it is, we have not found the traces. If the window is short, if something about the transition to high technology tends to destabilize the civilizations that make it, within centuries rather than millennia, then the silence makes a different kind of sense. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of endings. Millions of civilizations, perhaps, that rose slowly over billions of years of biological time, that reached the threshold of radio and nuclear and biotechnology, and then, for reasons that varied from one to the next, did not persist long enough to leave a lasting mark. The ruins of a civilization do not last forever, even on a geological timescale. The structures we build would be difficult to identify after a few million years of erosion and tectonic recycling. A civilization that ended 100 million years ago would leave almost nothing we could recognize from here. So the galaxy could be full of endings, full of the quiet aftermath of civilizations that never found a way through. And we would not know. We would look out at the same stars, receive the same silence, and have no way to distinguish between a galaxy that never produced much life and a galaxy that produced a great deal of it, most of which is now gone. This is the weight of the filter ahead. It does not require catastrophe in the dramatic sense. It only requires that the window of stability be short relative to the timescales of the cosmos, that the gap between capability and wisdom be wide enough and persistent enough that most civilizations do not cross it. And we are, right now, somewhere inside that window. Not at the beginning of it. We have already built the weapons and edited the genomes and begun the systems that learn. We are already in the part of the story where the filter, if it is ahead of us, would be operating. That is not a reason for despair. It is simply where we are. And knowing where you are is the beginning of navigating carefully. The night is still. The questions are still here, resting quietly in the dark where you left them. There's nothing to resolve tonight, nothing to decide. Only the slow, patient fact of the cosmos continuing around you, indifferent and vast, while you drift toward the edge of sleep. And even if a civilization did not survive, even if something ended it, quietly or catastrophically, somewhere in the long middle of cosmic history, the evidence would not wait for us. A city, left alone for 1,000,000 years, becomes soil. A radio tower becomes rust, then dust, then nothing distinguishable from the ground beneath it. The materials return to the planet, and the planet continues its slow orbit. And from a distance of even a few light years, there is nothing to see, nothing to measure, nothing that says something was here. We tend to think of ruins as lasting things. We have ruins on Earth that are thousands of years old and still recognizable as the work of minds. But thousands of years is almost nothing on the timescale we are speaking of. A civilization that ended 10 million years ago would leave, in all likelihood, no surface structure, no detectable artifact, no chemical trace that could be distinguished from ordinary geology across interstellar distances. The galaxy could be full of graveyards, and we would not know. This is one of the quieter implications of the filter ahead, not just that civilizations may end, but that their ending is nearly invisible. The cosmos does not preserve what is lost, it simply continues. So we look for the living, or at least for the signs that something living is present, even if we cannot see it directly. The most realistic way we have, right now, of searching for life beyond our solar system is not radio signals or spacecraft or any form of deliberate contact. It is chemistry. The chemistry of atmospheres. Read from a distance, the way you might smell a kitchen before you open the door. A planet with life on it tends to have an atmosphere that is chemically out of balance. Life consumes and produces gases in ways that would not persist without continuous biological activity. The atmosphere becomes, in a sense, a signature, a biosignature, a chemical record of something ongoing. Oxygen is the clearest example we know. Oxygen is reactive. It bonds readily with rocks, with metals, with other gases. Left alone, it disappears from an atmosphere within geological timescales. If a planet has abundant free oxygen, something must be producing it continuously. On Earth, that something is photosynthesis. Billions of organisms, quietly converting sunlight and carbon dioxide into sugar and oxygen every day for billions of years. If we saw that signature on another world, oxygen, perhaps alongside methane, which should not coexist with oxygen without constant replenishment, we would have reason to pause, reason to look more carefully. Not proof, but a quiet signal that something may be happening there. And now, for the first time, we have an instrument capable of reading those signals. The James Webb Space Telescope can, under the right conditions, analyze the atmospheric composition of planets orbiting other stars. It does this by watching starlight filter through a planet's atmosphere as the planet passes in front of its sun. Different molecules absorb different wavelengths of light, and the pattern of absorption tells us what the atmosphere contains. Water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, and perhaps, in time, oxygen. This is a genuinely new capability. For most of human history, exoplanets were theoretical. Then they were confirmed but unresolvable points of light. Now, slowly, we are beginning to read them. Not perfectly, not for all planets, not yet with the sensitivity to detect faint biosignatures with certainty, but the door has opened. And what would it mean if we walked through it? What would it mean to find a biosignature, a real one, confirmed, on a world orbiting another star? It would not answer the great filter question. Not directly. It would not tell us whether that life was simple or complex, ancient or recent, alone on its world or part of something larger. But it would reshape the calculation in a profound way. If life exists independently on even one other world within our small corner of the galaxy, then life is not vanishingly rare. The first steps of the filter, the origin of life, the basic chemistry of biology, would be behind us as a species and behind life in general. The filter, if it exists, would have to lie somewhere further along the path. In the transition to complexity, or to intelligence, or to the long stability that a technological civilization requires, the silence would become more pointed, not less. Because if life is common and intelligence is still absent from our skies, then something is stopping intelligence from persisting, and that something is more likely to be ahead of us than behind. This is why the discovery of even a single microbial world would be, in the quietest possible sense, a warning. But there is a complication. Life, it turns out, may not stay where it begins. There is a hypothesis, not proven, not disproven, held carefully by researchers who take it seriously, that life can travel between worlds, that microorganisms, sheltered inside rocks, blasted free by asteroid impacts, can survive the journey through space and seed new planets when they arrive. This is called panspermia. It is not as strange as it sounds. We know that rocks from Mars have landed on Earth. We know that some microorganisms can survive radiation and vacuum and the cold of space for extended periods. The question is whether the journey is survivable in full, the impact, the ejection, the transit, the arrival, and whether any organism could remain viable through all of it. We do not know the answer. But if panspermia is real, it changes what a life detection would mean. If we found microbial life on Mars, and that life shared a common biochemical ancestry with life on Earth, the same genetic code, the same molecular machinery, it might not be an independent origin at all. It might be us, or our cousins, carried there on a rock 4 billion years ago, or carried here from there. 2 data points that are actually one. The same would apply to any life found in the outer solar system, on the moons of Jupiter or Saturn, in the ice and water of Europa or Enceladus. If life is present there, we would need to determine whether it arose separately or arrived from somewhere else before we could count it as evidence of life's commonality. Independent origin is the thing we are looking for. The second genesis, the confirmation that the chemistry of life is not a singular accident, but a repeatable process that the universe performs wherever conditions allow. We have not found it yet. We are looking, and the looking itself is something worth holding gently as you rest. Not the urgency of it, not the stakes, but the simple fact that small instruments built by small creatures on one small world are now reading the light of distant suns and asking, quietly, whether anyone else is breathing out there. There is something almost tender about it. The search is patient. It does not demand an answer tonight. It continues in the dark, while you sleep, while the telescopes turn and the data accumulates, and the question hangs in the air, like a note held just past the point where you expect it to resolve. You do not need to hold it. it will hold itself. The atmosphere of a distant world is doing what it does, right now, whether we are watching or not. Oxygen rising, methane drifting, starlight passing through in patterns we have not yet learned to read. And somewhere in that light, there may be an answer, or there may be silence. Either way, it is not yours to carry into sleep. Let it rest where it belongs, out there, in the cold and the dark, patient as the stars themselves. You are here, warm and still and breathing. And that, for now, is enough. There is one more thread worth following before the night settles completely. A quiet one. It concerns a question that sounds simple but reaches further than almost any other question science has ever asked. And it begins, as so many things do, with a caveat. Suppose we find life on Mars. Not fossils, not chemistry that might suggest life once existed, but something living, something small and ancient, tucked into a crack in the rock, drawing energy from minerals the way the earliest life on Earth once did. The instinct would be to feel that the question is answered, that life is common, that the filter, whatever it is, must lie ahead. But there is a complication. Mars and Earth have been exchanging material for billions of years. When large asteroids strike a planet, they can eject fragments of rock into space with enough force to escape gravity entirely. Some of those fragments eventually fall on neighboring worlds. We have found meteorites on Earth that originated on Mars. The journey is slow, measured in millions of years, but it happens. And life, as far as we can tell, is remarkably good at surviving inside rock. So, if life exists on Mars today, or existed there long ago, it may not have arisen independently. It may have traveled. A passenger on a stone, crossing the void between two worlds that were, in some sense, never entirely separate. If that is true, if Earth life and Mars life share a single origin, then finding life on Mars would not be a second data point. It would be an echo of the first. The same story, told twice, on two worlds close enough to share their debris. The number of times life has independently begun in this solar system might still be one, and one is not enough to draw conclusions from. This is the quiet difficulty at the heart of everything we have been tracing tonight. Our sample size is exactly one. One planet where life arose. One lineage that eventually produced creatures capable of asking why. One civilization, so far as we know, that has looked outward and wondered whether the looking is returned. From a single example, you cannot calculate a probability. You can only say that it happened at least once, whether that means it happens often, or whether we are a fluke so improbable that the mathematics of it would make the mind go still. We genuinely do not know. There is a principle in science and philosophy that touches this problem gently. It is called the anthropic principle, and it reminds us of something easy to forget. We can only observe a universe in which we exist. That sounds obvious, but its implications are not. If the emergence of intelligent life requires a long and improbable chain of events, the right star, the right planet, the right moon, the right catastrophes at the right times, the right cellular mergers, the right extinctions, then we should not be surprised to find ourselves in a universe where all of those things occurred. Because if they had not, we would not be here to notice their absence. The anthropic principle does not tell us that life is rare or common. It tells us that our own existence cannot be used as evidence that existence is easy. We are, by definition, survivors of every filter that came before us. We cannot see the ones that stopped others, because those others left no one behind to look. This is the bias built into the question itself. And it is why the question remains open. Whether the great filter is behind us or ahead of us, this may be, as some researchers have quietly suggested, the most consequential open question in all of science. Not because the answer changes what we should do tomorrow, but because it changes what we are. If the filter is behind us, then the universe is vast and mostly empty in a way that is almost impossible to hold in the mind. 2 trillion galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars, and across all of that, silence. Not because life is impossible, but because the steps required to reach this point are so improbable that they have happened, as far as we can tell, only here. We would be something the universe has not managed to produce anywhere else we can find. Not special in the way that flatters, special in the way that isolates. Carriers of something extraordinarily rare: awareness, language, the ability to ask questions about the nature of things. In a cosmos that is otherwise dark and indifferent and very, very quiet. There is a kind of loneliness in that possibility that does not resolve into comfort easily. But there is also something else in it, something that asks to be held carefully. If we are rare, then what we do with this matters in a way that has no parallel anywhere we can see. The only voices in a silent galaxy, the only eyes looking back at the stars and understanding, even partially, what they are. And if the filter is ahead, then the silence takes on a different quality entirely. It becomes a record, an archive of absences. Every civilization that reached our level of complexity, our level of technological capability, our moment of standing at the edge of the cosmos and wondering, and then, for reasons we have not yet faced, went quiet. The silence would not be emptiness. It would be aftermath. A warning written not in words, but in the absence of every voice that might have spoken and did not. We would be, in that case, somewhere in the middle of a story whose ending we cannot see, surrounded by the ruins of civilizations we will never find, because a few million years of decay and distance erases almost everything. And somewhere ahead of us, something we have not yet encountered, a threshold that others reached and did not cross. Neither answer is comfortable. Neither answer is meant to be. But there is something in the act of holding them, both of them, together, without forcing a resolution, that feels like the right relationship to have with a question this large. You do not need to solve it. No one alive tonight will solve it. What you can do is let it rest in you the way a stone rests at the bottom of still water. Present, settled, not going anywhere. The question will be here when the telescopes open again tomorrow, when the data from distant atmospheres is processed and examined and argued over by people who have given their working lives to the asking. It will be here when the next generation of instruments turns towards stars we have not yet named and looks for the faint chemical signatures of something breathing. It will be here, patient as the universe itself, which has been holding this silence for 13 billion years without any sign of impatience. You are one answer to one version of the question, a mind that arose on a small, warm world, orbiting an ordinary star in a galaxy that is one of 2 trillion. And tonight, that mind is growing quiet. The thoughts are slowing. The weight of the question is lifting, not because it has been answered, but because sleep asks for nothing from you. Not understanding, not resolution, not even attention. Only rest. The stars are where they have always been. The silence is what it has always been. And you are here, briefly, improbably, and for now, completely still. Let the dark hold the question. It has held it this long. There is one moment in the history of this search that has never quite let go of the people who study it. It happened on the 15th of August, 1977. A radio telescope in Ohio, part of a project called Big Ear, was scanning the sky as it did every night, slowly, methodically, sweeping across frequencies the way you might run a finger along a shelf of books, looking for something out of place. The telescope did not alert anyone in real time. It printed its data onto paper, columns of numbers and letters representing signal strength, and those pages were set aside to be reviewed later. A few days afterward, an astronomer named Jerry Amon sat down with those printouts. He was looking for anomalies, and he found one. A single column of characters read, 6 EQJ5. In the notation the telescope used, letters represented signal strengths too high for single digits. The letter U meant a signal roughly 30 times stronger than the background noise of the sky. That was not supposed to be there. Amon circled it in red pen, and in the margin, he wrote one word. Wow. That is how it got its name. The signal lasted for the full 72 seconds that the telescope's beam would have been aligned with a single point in the sky. It rose, peaked, and fell in exactly the shape you would expect from a genuine point source moving through the beam. Not a satellite, which would have moved differently. Not a ground-based transmitter, which would have appeared in both of the telescope's feed horns rather than just one. It arrived at a frequency very close to 1420 megahertz. That frequency is significant. It is the natural emission frequency of neutral hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. For decades, researchers had argued that any civilization attempting to signal across interstellar distances might choose that frequency precisely because any other civilization capable of radio astronomy would know to listen there. It is, in a sense, the one channel the cosmos itself suggests. The signal was narrowband, meaning it was concentrated in a very tight slice of the radio spectrum. Natural astrophysical sources tend to spread their energy across broader ranges. A narrowband signal is more consistent with something deliberately constructed. It came from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, from a region of sky that contained no known star capable of producing such a signal through any understood natural mechanism. And then it was gone. Big Ear looked again, many times. The same patch of sky was observed dozens of times in the weeks and months that followed. Nothing. The signal did not repeat. It left no trace, no echo, no confirmation. For decades, the WOW signal sat in a category of its own, not explained, not dismissed, not confirmed. Simply there, in the margin of a printout, circled in red. Various natural explanations have been proposed over the years. One suggestion, offered in 2017, was that the signal might have come from a comet. Two comets were in roughly that region of sky at the time, and comets can release hydrogen gas that might, under certain conditions, produce a radio emission near the hydrogen line. The proposal was examined carefully. Many researchers found it unconvincing. The geometry was difficult to reconcile, and the signal characteristics did not match well with what cometary hydrogen emission would be expected to produce. The debate has not fully closed, but the comet hypothesis has not been widely accepted as a resolution. There is also the possibility of terrestrial interference, a signal originating from Earth, reflected or refracted in some unusual way. But the single feed horn detection argues against most forms of local interference, which would typically appear in both horns simultaneously. The telescope's design was specifically intended to help filter out earthly noise. Human error in the data recording or interpretation has been considered, but the signal's shape, its duration, its frequency, its intensity, all of these are consistent with a real detection of something real. The error, if there was one, would have to be remarkably systematic. What remains is a signal that has no clean explanation. It is worth sitting with that for a moment, not with urgency, but with the quiet acknowledgement that science sometimes produces results it cannot yet categorize. The wow signal is not proof of anything. It is a single data point without a second data point to confirm it. In science, one unrepeated observation cannot carry the weight of a conclusion. And yet, it has the shape of what we said we were looking for: narrowband, near the hydrogen frequency, from a direction with no known natural source, lasting exactly as long as a point source should last, appearing once and never again. If a civilization somewhere in the direction of Sagittarius sent a single pulse, or a repeating signal that we happen to catch in one rotation of its broadcast pattern, and if that pattern repeats on a timescale of years or decades rather than days, we might simply have been listening at the wrong moment every time since. The sky is large, the frequencies are many. The times we have looked at any single point are few. Big Ear itself no longer exists. It was demolished in 1997 to make way for a golf course expansion. The telescope that caught the only signal in the history of this search that has never been explained is gone. Its data lives on in archives, in papers, in the memory of the people who worked there. Jerry Amon, who circled that column of numbers, has said in interviews that he does not know what it was. He has been careful not to overclaim. He has also been careful not to dismiss it. That kind of honesty, held over decades, is its own form of scientific integrity. The search has continued with other instruments, more sensitive, more capable, covering more of the sky, more of the time. The WOW signal's coordinates have been revisited with telescopes far more powerful than Big Ear ever was. Nothing matching that signal has been found, which means one of several things. It was a natural phenomenon we do not yet understand. It was a human artifact of some kind, a reflection or an error that mimicked the expected shape of an extraterrestrial signal with unusual precision. Or it was something genuinely artificial, something that broadcast once in our direction, or many times, and we have not yet been looking at the right place, at the right time, with the right instrument. We do not know. That uncertainty is not a failure. It is the honest condition of a search that has been running for a few decades across a galaxy that has been running for 10 billion years. The asymmetry is enormous. We are very new at this. What the WOW signal leaves behind is not an answer. It leaves behind a posture, a reason to keep listening, a reminder that the data, when examined carefully, can still surprise the person holding the printout. Somewhere in the archives, that page still exists. The columns of numbers, the circled letters, the handwritten word in the margin. A small red circle around something that might have been nothing, or might have been the only time, in all of our listening, that something out there briefly aligned with our small antenna on our small planet, and the universe allowed a faint signal to travel across the dark and arrive at exactly the moment a human being was paying attention. We do not know which it was. And tonight, that not knowing is not a weight. It is simply the shape of the question, resting quietly at the edge of sleep. The printout is in the archive. The sky is where it has always been. The frequency of hydrogen hums through the cosmos, whether anyone is listening or not. And somewhere, in the direction of Sagittarius, the stars are burning, as they have always burned. Quietly, without explanation, without urgency. Just light, traveling through the dark, the way it always has. And yet, the archive holds more than one mystery. There is another page from another night that has never quite been explained away. It happened in the summer of 1977, the 16th of August, a warm night in Ohio. Though the telescope itself did not feel warmth or cold, it simply listened, the way it had been built to listen, sweeping slowly across the sky as the Earth turned beneath it. The telescope was called Big Ear, a radio observatory at Ohio State University, built not with a dish, but with a flat reflector and a tilted horn, a design that made it look less like what most people picture when they think of a telescope and more like a large, quiet field of metal. It had been running as part of a SETI survey for several years by then, scanning the sky methodically, recording everything it received onto paper printouts that researchers would later read by hand. The data came out as columns of alphanumeric characters. Each character represented a signal intensity on a scale from 1 to 9, and then continuing with letters for higher values. Most of the printout was 1s and 2s, background noise, the ordinary hiss of the cosmos going about its business. And then, on that August night, something different arrived. A volunteer researcher named Jerry Amon was going through the printout days later, marking anything that seemed unusual. He came to a sequence of characters that read 6EQJ5, 6 letters and numbers clustered together in a way that stood out sharply from everything around them. The signal had risen from the background, climbed steeply, peaked, and then fallen away again in almost exactly the shape you would expect from a genuine point source in the sky as the Earth's rotation carried the telescope beam across it. Amon circled the sequence in red pen, and in the margin, he wrote one word: "Wow." That word has stayed with the signal ever since. What made it so unusual was not just its strength, though it was strong. It was the combination of characteristics that, taken together, matched almost precisely what SETI researchers had theorized an artificial signal from another civilization might look like. It was narrowband, meaning it was concentrated at a very specific frequency rather than spread across a range. Natural astrophysical processes tend to produce broadband noise. A signal compressed into a single narrow channel suggests something deliberate, something engineered. The frequency itself was close to 1420 MHz, the emission frequency of neutral hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. This frequency had been proposed as a natural meeting point for interstellar communication, a channel that any technologically capable civilization might think to use, precisely because any civilization capable of radio astronomy would know it. It was, in a sense, the frequency the cosmos itself had written into the periodic table. The signal lasted for the full 72 seconds that Big Ear's beam would have been expected to observe a fixed point in the sky. No more, no less. It rose and fell in exactly the right shape. And then it was gone. Researchers pointed the telescope back at the same region of sky again and again in the weeks and months that followed. Nothing. The frequency was quiet. The columns returned to 1s and 2s. In the decades since, the WOW signal has been examined from many directions. Natural explanations have been proposed and tested. One suggestion was that the signal came from a comet, specifically from hydrogen gas surrounding a comet's nucleus. In 2017, an astronomer named Antonio Paris proposed that 2 comets, designated 266P Christensen and 335P Gibbs, had been in roughly that region of sky at the time. The hypothesis attracted attention, but other researchers examined it carefully and found the geometry difficult to reconcile with the signal's characteristics. The comet's hydrogen clouds, they argued, would not have produced a signal that narrowband, that clean, that brief. The debate has not fully closed, but the comet explanation has not been widely accepted. Radio frequency interference from a human source, a satellite, a military transmission, a reflected signal from Earth has also been considered. But Big Ear used 2 separate feed horns, separated by a few minutes of sky. A terrestrial signal would have appeared in both. The wow signal appeared in only one, which is consistent with a genuine point source in the sky, moving with the stars. No equipment malfunction has been identified that would produce that specific pattern, and so it remains unexplained, not confirmed as artificial, not confirmed as natural, sitting in the archive the way certain questions sit in the mind at the edge of sleep, present, unresolved, neither demanding an answer nor releasing you from the wondering. The region of sky where it originated is in the constellation Sagittarius, the same general direction as the dense inner regions of the Milky Way. Hundreds of billions of stars in that direction. Old stars, many of them. Stars that have been burning since long before our sun condensed from its cloud of gas and dust. We do not know what sent that signal. We do not know if anything sent it. We only know that for 72 seconds, something arrived at a small metal structure in Ohio that matched, more closely than anything before or since, the profile of what we had said we were looking for. And then the sky went quiet again. There is something in that quietness that is worth sitting with. Not as a source of dread, not as a puzzle demanding solution, but as a reminder of the scale of what we are attempting. We are one species, on one planet, around one star, in one arm of one galaxy among 2 trillion. We have been listening, in a serious way, for roughly 60 years, with instruments that can only detect certain kinds of signals, in certain frequency ranges, pointed at certain parts of the sky, for certain amounts of time. The silence, in that light, is not surprising. What is surprising is that we heard anything at all. Even once. Even for 72 seconds. Even something we cannot explain. The printout still exists. The red circle is still there. The handwritten word in the margin, written by a person sitting at a table going through columns of numbers on an ordinary afternoon, not expecting to find anything. Wow. A quiet word for a quiet discovery, or a quiet almost discovery, or a quiet reminder that the universe is not obligated to make itself legible to us. We keep listening anyway, because the alternative is to stop. And stopping feels like a kind of answer we are not ready to give. The hydrogen frequency hums through the dark between the stars. The archive holds its pages. The sky holds its silence. And somewhere in the direction of Sagittarius, whatever it was, comet, or interference, or something we have no name for, has long since moved on. The night is very still now. The questions are still there, but they are soft. They do not press. They simply rest. The way the stars rest in the sky, burning quietly, without urgency, without explanation, just there.